Hello everyone, I am so grateful to you for joining us for the second episode of Real Life with the Carolife. My name is Caroline and I'm going to be your host today. I'm also the owner of the blog called The Carolife. If you want to watch the first episode of this series, which is an interview with my sister Meg, go ahead and subscribe to this channel and also check out the comment section where I've added any relevant information you might want to know about my blog. Today's episode is a special edition. It's about the Black Lives Matter movement, it's about the current racial injustices that have been happening in the United States, and it's also about anti-racism work. I'm featuring some amazing teen women who have great advice for us, great insights, and wonderful thoughts about all of this going on. I'm so grateful to them for being honest, open, and vulnerable to sharing this, and I think you guys will love what they have to say. I also wanted to mention that we are doing this in a blackout style video in order to amplify voices, so most of the video will be blacked out, just as a heads up. Lastly, thank you so much for joining us because I really appreciate you taking the steps to learn from the youth and to educate yourself on these topics. Without further ado, let's meet these amazing women and to hear their introductions. One last thing that I wanted to add before we go ahead and get to these amazing introductions is that this is one of the two episodes where we are going to discuss these topics. So this first episode that we are doing today is kind of an overview, kind of an introduction to these topics and getting to know our speakers. And then the second episode that is going to be released later this week is going to be a little bit more in depth about these topics. So stay tuned for that. We're really excited to share both episodes with you, and that's all.
Hi, my name is Lylena Estabin, and I'm a recent graduate from Olathe Northwest High School. This fall, I'll be attending Harvard University. I currently serve as one of the 3rd District delegates for Joe Biden. My mother comes from a long line of Kansans, and with mostly British descent, she's Caucasian, and my dad is a Haitian immigrant. I'm a published author. My book On the Bridge uses dystopia as a gateway into conversations with young adults about privilege and prejudice, and I wrote this mostly because of the vocality of those issues I was seeing as a result of the 2016 election.
Hello, I'm Julia Beveridge. I'm an incoming freshman at Olathe Northwest. I'm very passionate about the Black Lives Matter movement, equality for all races, and equality for men and women.
Hi, my name is Samantha. My parents are born in Haiti, but I was born in the US. I'm very passionate about race relations as I did earn a certificate of accomplishment for the Princeton Prize in Race Relations. As for my favorite hobbies in academics, I am an IB candidate and I love educating myself and others. It can vary from politics, history, and even medicine, as I hope to become a pharmacist one day.
Hi, my name is Taylor Doyle, and I'm so excited to be given this opportunity to speak for this podcast. I'm so proud of you as a listener. You've came to the right spot. We're going to be learning about different people with different perspectives on the Black Lives Matter movement. And you're going on your journey to learn even more and educate yourself, where all of us speaking are still on. And I'm so excited to be able to speak with you today. I'm involved with a lot of activist works in and outside of school. Outside of school, I'm extremely involved with the Sunrise Movement. Sunrise Movement is a global movement. We follow along with the Green New Deal and we support that. I'm extremely proud to be part of Sunrise, and I would encourage you to look into it, because not only are we trying to stop climate change, but we're also trying to end systematic racism. I'm also involved with a lot of activities inside of school, such as Women's Empowerment Club, Relay for Life, and so on and so on. I'm very involved with school, and that's something I'm extremely passionate about. Not only am I passionate about being involved with school, but I'm also extremely passionate about the Black Lives Matter movement. I love to educate myself and research as much as I can. I love to be able to speak my opinions, and I love to be able to discuss what I believe with people. And I'm so excited that you have decided that you wanted to talk about Black Lives Matter.
Hi guys, my name is Mia and I'm going to be a senior in high school. I'm involved in track, tennis, student council, and choir at my high school, and I also love biochemistry, which is what I hope to study in college. I actually moved to Kansas when I was 12, and before that I lived in Singapore.
Hi, my name is Maya, and I am passionate about anything that has to do with animals and science. I have always grown up around family, so I value family a lot.
Hi, I'm Ara. I have two siblings. I'm in the IB. I play the violin. I was born in Nigeria and I moved here in first grade, which very much influences my perspective at times, especially during times like this because voices of immigrants, both documented and undocumented, go unheard. It's so important to me that the nation starts to recognize the important roles that we immigrants play in the economy and society.
The first question I wanted to ask today was, how are you and your family doing? What does this time look like and feel like for you? We want to give you a space to talk about this and to have an environment of support for wherever you guys are at.
Because I have at risk people living in my house, it's been a very isolated experience. Since March, I've been inside. The first time I went out was to go to the store a few weeks ago, and even now, I've been confined to the house. It makes the situation with Black Lives Matter even more difficult because I have to act within certain parameters, almost like a bubble. It's required some creativity because I can't protest in the traditional sense of the word.
While we see our family and friends, we sit outside and we make sure to keep our distance. We're extremely passionate about wearing masks and being responsible during this time. We're in a pandemic. We need to be responsible.
Recently, by seeing all the Black Lives Matter stuff on my social media or in the news, my friends and family are definitely bringing up a lot of deep and healthy discussions about this topic and how all of us need to actively be anti-racist. I think at first it definitely was a hard conversation to have. All of us felt ashamed and angry because we felt like in the past we have not done enough to address this issue and we have not done enough to speak up. But I think by having these deep discussions, we are definitely trying to stay educated and trying to actively be anti-racist.
I think I might be able to speak on behalf of all American families right now that it is tough facing the impacts and effects of COVID 19 on top of the current racial injustice pandemic as well. We are all going through the same thing together, and no bit of it is difficult with all of these layers on top of working, but transitions to college and normal life with all of that together. So it's a lot for sure. And as far as what this time in specific looks like for my family and I would say that with my parents being private practice owners and with my siblings and I being college students as well as just elementary school students, there's a lot of creative thinking going on about how we can change our environment, how we can impact our state with our restrictions on COVID 19, so going to safe protests and self educating and posting on social media. And so I would just say that we have definitely made ourselves a lot more aware of this issue than we ever had before, and we're doing a lot more about it and continuing to see what we can be doing. Okay, so the next question that we're going to talk about is how you feel when you discuss racism. And all of us have such unique perspectives and thoughts on this, and so I just kind of love to hear how you feel when discussing it and why you think it might be difficult and uncomfortable for some people to talk about, and how we can kind of break through those barriers to make them more commonplace and open conversations. And then to kind of tag on to that, just as a final piece, I wanted to know like what makes this personal and what makes this kind of difficult or connected to you in a deep way. Because yet again, all of us have such a wide experience, and I want to know how this connects to you in your life, in your journey.
For me personally, I feel comfortable talking about racism, but for other people, it may be difficult or uncomfortable because they don't want to have to worry about the change that will come with ending racism. On a day to day basis, for me, I face racism whether it's very loud and bold and in my face or quiet and from a distance. I'm biracial. My mother is Filipino and my dad is black. So I've had plenty of looks and comments made to me that have made me uncomfortable or feel very singled out due to my skin color.
The origins of racism in the United States go back so far. It starts in the early 1600s with slavery, and after slavery was abolished, Jim Crow laws. Just 60 years ago, African Americans weren't allowed to drink out of the same water fountains, go to the same bathrooms, movie theaters, schools, doctors' offices, restaurants, and so many more places. Racism was something that just happened. A lot of people contributed to it and a lot of people did nothing. In the past 40 or so years, more and more people have been waking up and realizing that racism is a problem. People know they should speak up, but because it was pushed under the rug for 400 years, they don't know what to say or how to do it. Racism is so ingrained in American culture that changing it just makes people uncomfortable. People are scared that they'll do or say the wrong thing. Because racism has been a part of America for so long, it feels normal.
This topic is personal for me because I am black, and so these are things that affect me or could affect me in the future. And the only difficult thing about it for me is that I'm usually someone who can argue with facts and figures and explanations and make a rational argument without getting my emotions caught up into it. But with this issue, it's different because I see black people getting killed on TV or social media so often. I see black people being brutalized in the media. I see black children being treated with the hostility that isn't granted to some of the world's worst killers and rapists. And it hurts all the more because in those faces, I'm able to see my father, my brother, my sister, my aunts and uncles, my cousins. And there's this grim reality that we're not just talking about figures and distant people who could be anybody. We're talking about my family. We're talking about my reality. And so it hurts even more.
I would say that discussions about racism have definitely become a lot more comfortable and a lot more common than they have been in the past. I never really wanted to offend anybody. I didn't feel educated enough or even aware of the topic enough to discuss it in the past, but even though there is still room to improve and to educate myself now, I'm definitely a lot more open to having those discussions in order to make change. I would say what makes this personal for me is definitely my sister Kate. So, my little sister Kate is adopted and she's African American. Nonetheless, she is my absolute full sister and I love her to death. But it just creates such a complex role for my family as a white family raising a black woman in today's world. And so, we're obviously trying to educate and to learn and to be in these spaces as much as possible so we can do our due part in raising Kate to be a strong, amazing, wonderful, capable woman. So yes, that definitely makes it a lot more personal to me because it impacts my life and it impacts somebody that I love very, very much.
Racism is definitely not an easy topic to discuss. It can often feel difficult, uncomfortable, or scary. For me, I know it was scary to talk about it because I often felt too uneducated to talk about it, or I was scared of saying the wrong thing, and I definitely didn't want to offend anyone. I think it's important to note, though, that that is exactly why we need to be having these discussions, is to address the prejudices that you do have and correct them, and also correct any misconceptions you have and learn from it and teach others.
When I talk about racism, I'm talking about 400 years of millions of people who look like me and have lived their lives in pain due to something that they had nothing to do with. When I talk about race, I'm talking about the entire diaspora, about how all over the world, in some way, shape, or form, they're being persecuted and mistreated. That is a whole continent of people in one country or another because of the slave trade or for better opportunities that were met with years upon years of oppression. So, I wish I could be nice and patient about while talking about race, but for this country alone, it's 400 years too late for patience. And the thing that makes it so hard for other people is their lack of education or exposure to these topics. For one, people think race relations is a political thing, but it's a life thing. A lot of people have never been in a situation where they see firsthand the way it works, and I hope they never have to be, but it would enlighten them to see what is going on in their country. Another thing is that maybe you know enough about racism and you feel uncomfortable in your privilege and guilt, but I say don't, because that wastes time. Use that privilege to go out and make a change. Use your knowledge to educate others and spread the message. This is a human rights issue.
When I'm discussing racism, I'm absolutely comfortable. From a young age, I've had to understand racism and the effects of it. For others, conversations about racism are uncomfortable and difficult because it's not being discussed enough. You have to get comfortable being uncomfortable in those situations because that's the only way you'll learn and have the opportunity to educate others.
At the beginning, like a couple years ago when I wasn't really researching that much about the Black Lives Matter movement, I felt very uncomfortable about discussing racism just because my type of personality is I like to be a people pleaser, and I also am so nervous about hurting another person, where I feel like if I say something wrong, then I'm going to offend people. And my idea wasn't just that I was going to, like, I didn't care about offending a white person. I cared about offending a black person. And I was so scared. And that made me really uncomfortable and difficult to talk about this topic. But now that I've gotten older and I researched a lot more, people need my voice. We need everyone's voices to speak on this. So even if it makes you feel uncomfortable or if it's difficult for you to talk about, you owe it to people. You owe it to our future to be able to talk on these subjects. And you should be mature enough to be able to realize that. And I understand that it's extremely hard in the beginning, but eventually when you keep researching, you're going to get to that point where you realize that your voice needs to be heard.
All right, now let's talk about non-racism versus anti-racism. So, in your own words, describe both anti-racism and non-racism, and describe why non-racism just isn't good enough. Also explain, what does anti-racism look like in our daily lives? How can we apply it and use that to make change?
Non-racism. Noun. The absence of racism or the quality of not being racist. Anti-racism. Adjective. Acting to prevent racism. For hundreds of years, racism was something that just happened. Not a ton of people did anything about it because, one, it didn't affect them, or two, they didn't want people to judge them. People just assumed that not being racist was enough, but not advocating for it is just as bad. Well, maybe you personally aren't racist, you are letting others get away with being racist. If you sit on your phone or watch the news on TV and see the African Americans that died because of the color of their skin, yet don't do anything about it, don't educate yourself on the topic, don't correct something racist that a family member or friend does or says, don't post anything on social media, don't sign any petitions, you're part of the problem. Racism won't just go away. Racism isn't something that will just blow over. Racism is so embedded in this country's culture that not being racist just isn't enough. We need to act on it if we want to see a change.
From my perspective, non-racism is what we've been doing. Non-racism is ignoring your family or your friends when they make a racist joke, maybe laughing it off. The problem with that is oftentimes what we label as just a joke is actually more along the lines of deeply rooted prejudices and actual feelings. The reason we're now calling for anti-racism is because those jokes, those assumptions, those microaggressions have to be shut down. It's not enough to just not do it yourself. You have to be proactive about it in your community.
So when researching about the Black Lives Matter movement, you'll hear these words non-racism, anti-racism. And these are words that are really extremely important to understand the difference of. Non-racism to me means that you say that you're not racist because you think you treat everyone equally and you don't say racist words, but you're not going above and beyond to be anti-racist. And that's what we want. We want people to donate, to sign petitions, to protest if you're able to do everything in your power to use your white privilege to be able to end racism. It's not good enough to be non-racist. You need to strive for anti-racism.
Non-racism to me are those people who like to say, I'm not racist, I have a black friend. The lack of action fails to prove their true despise for racism. They are of no use to the black community because they are just as complicit and remain as complacent as the racists. Now, this may sound harsh, but without the help of everyone, we won't be able to get anything done. Imagine if everyone in the Black Lives Matter movement thought they were doing something by only resharing a tweet and putting something on their Instagram story. There would be no progress, and that's my issue with non-racist people. It stunts the growth of the movement when everyone thinks their performative activism is revolutionary. We all need to be anti-racist to defeat racism. That's the only way.
Non-racist people are individuals who don't like blatant racism, but won't say anything about it. There are people who will see racism happening right in front of them, but won't do anything about it. They don't agree with it, but they'll refuse to take action. Rather than an anti-racist is against all forms of racism and will act and actually take action. In times like this, we cannot have non-racist people because progress will never be made.
Wow, that is like the only thing I can say to encompass my thoughts of these amazing young women's responses, obviously excluding my own, but I just cannot say enough good things about them, about their thoughts, and about who they are as people. So just believe it or not, the second episode only gets better from here. So I really hope you all will stay tuned to hear what they have to say, because it truly is absolutely amazing, possibly even better than this one. So I'm so grateful to the amazing responders for being so open to this and for responding so thoughtfully and so with such a mature lens and with such a good heart and good intentions. And I'm so thankful to you for being here, for allowing there to be a platform for the youth to share their opinions, because we all felt like there wasn't much opinions coming from youth about this and as much discussion from our side of things. And so I wanted to make sure that we all had a voice and we all had a platform to share that. So we appreciate you allowing that. And the second episode, as I mentioned earlier, will be released later this week, so please stay tuned to that. If you subscribe, it will show up. It will give you a notification on your feed, so you'll just be able to access that right away. But until then, I hope all of you stay well. I hope you stay healthy and you wear your masks and that you take care of your neighbor and that you love your neighbor. Yet again, I am Caroline. I am the owner of the Carolife, and you all are amazing. Take care, and we'll see you for the second episode.